All right, we've got yet another episode that I'm excited about because we are talking to people that make toys. And talking to people that make toys is one of my favorite things to do. First, from Zica Toys, Craig, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great. Nice to be here.
And thanks for coming on. And then from Giant Leap Toys, Tim Ellis, welcome to Needless Things.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it, man.
So we're here tonight to talk about your project, the Space 1999 Eagle One, and obviously we'll get to that. But I want to lay a little groundwork. First of all, Craig, can you tell us sort of the background to Zica Toys? You've been around for a while doing what you do. How'd
Right.
you get started with that, and how have you maintained your passion for almost 20 years?
I'm a glutton for punishment. Yeah, I started the company in 2006, and it kind of came out of me having a collectible toy store here in Falmouth, and a buddy of mine kind of gave me the idea of maybe trying to get into the actual business of making toys versus just selling them. So I decided to take him up on that and got into the business, and it's kind of been a roller coaster ever since. Started out with just some like small custom run type stuff, nothing big, and then I decided to dabble a little bit into the licensed properties, and that's kind of what I've been doing, ever since. It's just some of it's not licensed, some of it is licensed, just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Still plugging away.
So for our Audible interlude listeners, I think probably the Eagle Force stuff is going to be one of the more familiar things, which that Riot Trooper, I believe, is still available on the website.
Yeah, we still have a few of those left.
Um, how did the Eagle Force come around, and what's the story next to that? Because this is a brand that really has been chugging along again, revitalized for a few years
Mhm.
now.
Yeah, I partnered up with Bill Murphy of Fresh Monkey Fiction, who they actually own that IP. I worked with him on the first wave, which I think we had like over 30 SKUs on that first wave. It was crazy. And after we finally got that out, I just kind of diverged from that and started doing my own stuff. But that's how I was involved with that. Is just for that first wave. And Bill he's taken it and ran with it, and it's doing quite well. He started with the 6-inch figures of the Monster Force and
Yeah.
all that stuff. So it's some very, very cool stuff he's doing. So.
Yeah, that Operation Monster Force, that was my like line of the year last year. But I'll tell you this right now, Bill was on a few weeks ago. I hope to have him on again in the future. I'm going to tell him, look, you got to get back to O-Ring with Eagle Force. We need some gold O-Ring Eagle Force figures.
Actually, have you been following Whiskey Jack Toys?
Yes.
You know who that is?
Yes.
Okay. Well, they're supposed to be doing a retro line of Eagle Force characters.
Ah, excellent.
So that is something that's in the works through them. Yeah.
Yeah, we've over the past couple of years, we've made our way through Grindstone, Whiskey Jack, and sometimes I can't remember who's doing what. Whiskey Jack is are they Legends of the Hidden Force?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, and then Call Sign Longbow is Grindstone, and then Operation Recall. Like this O-Ring phenomenon is wild, and that leads to what we'll get to in a bit with the Eagle One. Tim, tell us a little bit about Giant Leap Toys and what you've been doing in the business.
Yeah. I started out my working career as just a graphic designer and illustrator, and went to licensing show in New York. I want to say it was like 2002. Set up a booth there and met a gentleman from Hong Kong who was in the toy business. And so he and I kind of struck off on this, give and take relationship over the past couple of decades of me designing, block sets and, miniature trains and even, clothes for dolls and stuff like that. It was a entrance into kind of getting some toy experience under my belt and everything. So in 2013, I launched Secret Lab Toys and did vinyl characters that we had produced for Valiant. We did Bloodshot and Exo Man of War. We also licensed with Captain Action.
Oh, here we
And,
go. Okay.
Yeah,
I've got my materials. I was like, all right, I got to find where we are in my downloads.
there you go. Yeah. And so had some licensing in there, but it was primarily public domain figures. And that was going along at a pretty good clip until Funko blew up. And when Funko became the thing, the factory I was working with was like, well, if you can come up with a big chunk of change like Funko can, then we'll keep you in the factory. If we can't, then sayonara. So it was sayonara. So I've still got a pretty good inventory of that I plug here and there. And then of course when COVID hit, that killed all the convention, going out to conventions and everything. So when I decided to maybe talk to Craig about getting into this partnership, I decided just to start fresh and rebrand. So Giant Leap Toys,
which, by the way, considering the toy business, it's shocking the name Giant Leap was not already taken.
I know, right? Right.
Yeah.
And I'm just I'm a NASA nerd. I love old spaceships. I was a NASA baby, right? I grew up in the late 60s and 70s. And so, just to have that lunar module as a logo, I was like, oh yeah, that's a must have. I gotta claim that name. So yeah, I started a Kickstarter a couple of years back where I was going to reintroduce the Shogun Warriors, called it Shogun Force. There you go. And got a good response, but Kickstarter is a finicky mistress, and yeah, she gives and she takes, and so got a lot of response and a lot of learned a lot doing that project, and may circle back to it at some point in time. Craig and I were at PowerCon here in Columbus, Ohio. What year was that, Craig? Was that just 2022?
I believe so, yeah.
22. And we were in adjacent booths and just talking about what would be the dream project, and the Eagle popped to the top of the list. So that's where the partnership sprouted. We had known each other through Facebook for a number of years, but had never really tried to coordinate or work on anything until this. And so yeah, and here we are.
Man, talking about Kickstarter being finicky, I will never. I've interviewed a number of people doing various toy Kickstarters over the years, and I have no predictive ability whatsoever because I can think of two right now that in doing the interviews, there's no doubt in my mind that they would fund and be successful and be these huge launching points for things.
Sure.
And they didn't make it and fizzled out, and you didn't hear anything again. And it's a shame, but at the same time, it's inspiring for people to get out there and try and do and make things. And while there's nothing wrong with crowdfunding, when folks are doing what you guys are doing and already making this thing happen, I'm really impressed, and we'll get a little more into the story of the Eagle One in a minute. But actually, I do want to go back to Zica Toys a little bit because there are a couple of things here. First of all, I believe this was in the folder, and I got to tell you, this Gil Gerard likeness is fantastic. And these, when I told you before we started recording, Craig, that I remembered stuff being in previews, I think these Buck Rogers figures might be what I'm thinking of.
I think, yeah, they were in previews, I believe.
I mean, these are gorgeous.
Thank you.
And then prior to, there's some more Captain action going on right there. And then prior to the current resurgence of Sectars, you produced a nice series of these figures, which is kind of a nice full circle because one of the first toy creators I ever interviewed was Tim Clark.
Oh, okay.
this was prior to the relaunch of the Boglins. I posted a picture of some Boglins on Instagram, and he commented on them, and I was like, wait a minute, this is the Boglins guy. And I reached out, and he was nice enough to come on the show. And at the time, I don't even know what year this was, but at the time, he didn't understand why anybody would want to talk to him. And I mean, this is a man who worked, for the Jim Henson Company, who had incredible involvement with unique toy lines, and then of course now we've got Boglins are back, but Zica has done some really cool. I like that, Craig, you seem to really sort of pick your licenses. It's not just a matter of, like, I get a feel that you got to be passionate about it. You're not just taking what's out there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If I'm not really interested in it, I don't bother. I try to pick things that, that I was a fan of as a kid, a fan of as an adult, and go that way.
So prior to deciding to collaborate on this Eagle One, in your respective careers creating things, what would you say has been kind of the big high points of your education in toy manufacturing? Like, what are some lessons that you feel were maybe a little harder learned than others, or sort of tried and true standards that you've had to stick with over the years?
Go ahead, Tim.
Well, just one of the things that pops first to mind is you really have to be extremely focused and detailed on what it is you want, and communicating that with your factory. Because if anything is left open to interpretation, who knows what you'll get, right? So a lot of times the designers there will kind of just, if there's a little white space in the information that they don't quite have filled in, they're gonna just go off on a tangent. And we've even with this Eagle, we've wanted to keep some of the Mattel feel to it, but we also wanted to update it for a more sophisticated collector's market. So there's more detail that happens there. But these diehard Space 1999 fans, as soon as they started seeing pictures of the prototype and everything, they're like, well, this panel really shouldn't be here, and this doesn't go there, and and I don't blame them. I appreciate that attention to detail. But yeah, when Craig and I had to circle back with the factory a couple of times, it was just kind of like, yeah, don't go off on your own and kind of do your own thing. If there's a question, let us know. But yeah, I've just had experiences over the years that it's a fun job creating, but it's a babysitting job as well.
All right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah,
is the struggles with the factory and the communication, which unfortunately for this project we're working with Ramen Toys, and they have been phenomenal.
They've been
okay.
Incredible. Yeah.
Ace
He's kind of our project manager on
the
factory.
Yeah.
So and they are building a heck of a reputation for themselves at this point for bringing things to market that maybe we never thought we'd see, or doing things in a way that nobody ever thought of doing. And it's been a very impressive rise over the last couple of years, seeing what Ace and his team have been accomplishing. Yeah, you mentioned the factories, and that's something that we reiterate time and again on this show as we talk to people who are independent creators who are making toys. I think collectors tend to get a little hot under the collar about the amount of time it takes, but that's the thing that we always try to point out is, look, you send what you want to the factory comes back with, here's what we did, and there are things to be discussed, and sometimes that process, just those 2 points of conversation could take like a month, could take 6 weeks, because the factory has other things going on.
Right.
These smaller toy companies are not Hasbro or Mattel or whoever else is utilizing most of the factory resources in China or Vietnam or wherever. And the independent companies are you got to work your way around that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are the lone individual, quality control, product development, scheduler, planner, everything. And yeah, it does. It does get to be a little tasking sometimes, but yeah, again, just when it pays off, and like Craig mentioned, with this project, having Ace at the helm of this and helping us in that regard, it's gone way smoother than we could have expected. So, like I said, we just started the conversation on this at the end of 22, and got our pitch together in early 23 for Anderson, and then here we are, just a little over, a year later, and we've already brought it to market and going to tooling, and expect to hit our maybe even hit our delivery dates early here in 25.
So I'm glad you brought up Jerry Anderson because we love and respect fandom here on Needless Things. I mean, it's what we do.
Sure.
Could you each talk a little bit about why Space 1999? Just a little bit about your history with that franchise.
Okay, mine will be the shortest, Tim. Believe it or not, I have never seen an episode of Space 1999 ever. The only way I found out about Space 1999 was a buddy of mine when we were kids. He had that Mattel Space 1999 Eagle. And when I saw it at his house, I was completely blown away because this was just a little bit before Star Wars. I had never seen a toy at that time that was that big for action figures. So I was just completely blown away by the ship and the design and everything. And ever since, I saw it as a kid, I just kind of fell in love with it. And it was always sticking in the back of my mind, especially as I got to this point in my life where I'm actually making toys. I always wanted to kind of revisit that and, see what I could do with it. So that's my history with Space 1999.
So that ship, which honestly, my history is similar, except that because I have seen a few minutes of Space 1999 here and there, and I really particularly want to get into the second season because from what I understand, it's wild. But this toy, because I was born in 76, I'm sure I had seen one of these at some point in my life, but it wasn't until your campaign was brought to our attention that I guess I really looked at what it was. And I can't believe this thing was out. Because when did the original toy come out? Was it 76?
It was 1976.
It blows my mind that this thing predates, as you said, Star Wars by that much. And that it's this, I think we don't typically think of this scale of toy being like this at the time because it was still larger, like figure-wise, larger stuff. I don't know. This just seems like such an anomaly to me, and it's such a fascinating piece to look at. I totally get, Craig, why like you would be captivated by that original one to the point where even though maybe Space 1999 isn't your fandom, I want to make this toy because I've got stuff in this room that I bought just because this looks cool.
It's cool design, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think up to that point, most of the toys that I was playing with in that scale were like Micronauts. And even with Micronauts there, I don't remember any vehicles or ships that were to that scale. So when I saw this thing, I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. So, yeah.
So, Tim, I'm going to guess your relationship with Space 1999 is a little different.
A little different, yeah. Yeah, I had been watching Space 1999 on TV growing up in syndication. I was born in '63, so I was 13
Oh,
when the toy came out.
perfect.
Around 11, 12 when the show first aired, and I really liked it, but I was not at that point. I was not a fervent, like, oh, every Friday night at 8 o'clock I got to be in front of the TV to see Space 1999, right? Um, and so being like at that 13 years old and stuff, and like I had mentioned earlier, being kind of a NASA baby and everything, seeing Brian Johnson's spaceship design for the Eagle was just, and I've talked about this in another interview too. There's just an emotional reaction to that for me because, it's having been around all the craziness that was, us on our first moon landing and everything. It just felt like something that, yeah, by the time the year 1999 gets here, this is going to be the kind of vehicle that we're going to be taking back and forth from Earth to the moon. It just had that kind of impact on me. And similar to Craig, I did not have one myself, but a neighbor up the street had one. And I was, again, 13. I was kind of at that weird age. Am I going to play with toys? Am I going to chase girls? What am I gonna do?
Yeah.
And so, but I would just go over to his house and look at this Mattel toy, and just again, the scale of that at that time, nothing really on the market like that. Unless you count the Shogun Warriors or whatever. But
And those who are watching on the Needless Things channel, we've got images of the Giant Leap and Zica version of this, and you can see what this scale is because those are 3 3/4 inch figures, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
So, well, one, the scale, but two, the interactivity between the figures and the vehicle.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, we had Craig and I, as we got into conversations about this, we're O-ring fans. We love the O-ring format for figures and wanted to scale this up so that it would be adaptable to having O-ring figures with it. And so whereas the Mattel is about 2.5 feet long, this is scaled up now to over 3 feet, with capsule to engine housing, and probably about 15 inches across and 8 inches high. And so yeah, we kind of discussed, like, do we do something that stays like really true to what the original Mattel was, or do we push it and scale it up? And I think after really thinking about seeing these beautiful astronaut figures in 3 3/4 scale, it pretty much decided that we needed to take the vehicle to the larger scale.
Well, and I definitely think that was the way to go because, as we talked about, this resurgence of O-ring figures that's going on right now goes right along with this because I am susceptible to retro futuristic stuff in a big way. And when you talk about the design of this spaceship, I look at this and see something that in 1976 was very feasible as, yeah, this is what spaceships are going to look like in 20 years.
Mhm.
It's got a little, it's just a very classic sci-fi look. Even though I don't have the fandom for Space 1999, I have a huge fandom for old school model effects. And this is just this like beautiful, like it looks like something from the Smithsonian of the future. It's just such a 70s design. Like I love looking back at the speculation of like the ship from Alien, the stuff in Buck Rogers, the stuff like all of those concepts are so cool. And this one it's that, but bigger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it was interesting, talking about pre-Star Wars, right? We had Star Trek had been canceled, and there was just kind of really a desert of sci-fi out there. Plenty of like Irwin Allen and other kind of shows happening, but nothing that really played into this, fantastic spaceship, um, moon colony, visualizing the future in the way that Space 1999 did. And, it's unfortunate that it didn't get a little bit more love while it was on the air. But yeah, there's just so much about this and Jerry Anderson's universes overall that, for me growing up, I was just enthralled by all of it. Loved it all.
Yeah, Space 1999 is one of those franchises that I've always been aware of. And it almost seems like a staple of I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dragon Con that
Mhm.
happens in Atlanta. The
Mhm.
Dragon Con American Sci-Fi Classics track celebrates sci-fi 10 years and older. And this I have all since I've been involved with that has always felt like one of the obscure isn't the right word, but like one of the ones that somehow is the appreciation for it is so deep in the fandom
Yeah.
in a really interesting way because it's easy to love Star Trek and Star Wars and even like Buck Rogers. But Space 1999, there seems to be a devotion there that is a little bit different.
Mhm.
So let's talk about this massive undertaking that you have decided on. What you mentioned deciding to scale it up so it was compatible with the O-ring figures, which, like I said, I think was a fantastic move because it for me, it's yet another like, okay, you've got a cool looking spaceship, but also it scales with tons and tons of stuff I already have. So like it's almost like you've already given me the potato chip. Like I already like these potato chips. So this is just going to go right along with everything else. And I love that's another great thing about the modern era of toys is I do feel like there's more awareness now. Like in the 70s and 80s, it really felt like everybody was trying to come up with their own scale, their own aesthetics, their own style and stand out and be different, which I understand. But now it does seem like toy manufacturers are more conscious of, okay, I'm making this thing, and this is probably going to draw more people if it also works with this thing that already is out there.
Mhm.
So
Right.
the scale up was a great idea. However, I'm sure that presented challenges as far as not just design, but how it was going to be manufactured. What are some of the things you ran into while you were trying to figure out how this was going to happen? What were some of the challenges, or maybe even some things that turned out to be benefits?
Um, I'd say probably one of the main challenges were we initially wanted to have it to where the center module piece was separate, just like it is on the show, where they can
Mm,
drop it off and have other units or whatever it picks up. But it's so long that we had to go back to the original Mattel design of having the main body as just two pieces. So that whole long section there you're seeing, including the middle compartment, is now just two pieces, and that helps the stability and everything of the ship. So that's pretty much the only struggle really that we had, because I kept trying to figure out different ways to make that modular design work, and we just weren't coming up with any good ideas. So I said, let's just make it two pieces. That way it'll be, sturdier. So that's the direction we went in. But that was really the only major challenge on this. Scaling things up, there really wasn't uh, any difficulties in doing that, other than again just the having to keep that two-part construction on the main part of the body.
I
did
would,
oh,
sorry.
go ahead, Tim.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the only other thing that I would add to it, and it wasn't so much, a challenge as it was more of just a little bit of a headache. But as beautiful as that capsule is, to try and really fit 3 3/4 inch figures into it the way it's designed, is kind of tough because there's like zero leg room in there for the figures. And again, so hats off to Ace and his team for engineering this and working it out with that interior in such a way that those figures fit in and they fit nicely. And if you got big sausage fingers like I've got, it's a little tough to get them in and out anyhow. But the ramen toy guys they really took that task to heart and have designed this in a way that the interior looks and feels true somewhat to what the Mattel and the show is, but easily fits the 3 3/4 inch figures. And I just thought that was great how they pulled it off.
Well, and that's the other thing that I really like about the way this has been executed is it's gorgeous. Like when it's all closed up, it looks like the model. Like it looks like a cool we picked this up. This is a replica of the thing, but it's so toyetic on the inside. And I'm really one of my sweet spots in toys right now is people who are doing things that take a retro style toy and sort of imagine like, well, what if they'd had a little better technology back then? What if they'd thought a little bigger back then? What if the sculpt was a little better, the plastic was a little better, and we're seeing a retro design but with modern influence? And that's what I see when I look at this. Like it just really has it's elegant, but it's also clearly still a toy.
Yeah.
Like as much as I love some of the crazy stuff that Hasbro has done as HasLabs or whatever, it's amazing, but also sometimes it's almost too real looking. It doesn't look like a toy anymore. And I like there to be toyetic elements to things still.
Yeah. Well, that was part of our conversation. We wanted to have touches of screen accuracy, right? But we didn't want to go toward a full-blown replica. That's just not where we wanted to be. At the heart of it all, this was a tribute to Mattel's vision of what the Eagle was. And so yeah, it's probably a tip of the hat to Mattel first,
sure,
and then falling in line with the wants and needs of Anderson Entertainment second.
So did you find in working on this, were there certain aspects of it that you were excited about or that turned out to be your favorite part? Like, was there a favorite little part that was like, ooh, we can really kind of dig into this here and clean it up, update, or just had more fun with the design in any way?
Yeah, initially we were going to stick pretty close to the Mattel design. We really didn't have plans to do a lot of upgrades or anything, just a few here and there. But as it went on, I would start looking at other images of, model kits of the ship. There were some die-cast toys put out of it. And I started seeing these things that I thought, well, if they could do that, maybe we could do it. So it kind of progressed to from being almost strictly a Mattel copy, just in a larger scale, to what you see now. Like initially, it didn't have the framework around the sides there, close to the landing gear pods, because the Mattel version doesn't have that. But I saw that on another. It was a model kit on the die-cast, and I said, hey, let's try to do that. And then I was like, let's try to upgrade the landing gear. And then the small landing gear underneath the center module, I saw those on a custom on eBay. So, well, okay. And they were actually using them on a vintage Mattel ship. So that got me thinking, well, let's try to do that on ours as well. So just kind of, it slowly, evolved from our original idea of the Mattel ship to what you see now. And I'm sure we drove Ace a little bit crazy in the process, because it's like we would think we were finalized on something. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, we want to do this. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this is This is the end result, and we're very, very happy with it.
Well, and you were talking about the support structure of it before, and I've got to think that central landing gear helps with the stability and the support.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I was just going to say here, this is a great angle to have the ship on. There was some added detail underneath that that framework on the top that Mattel had done for whatever reason that doesn't exist in the screen accurate, models. But when we took a look at it without that detail there, it really lost a lot of character. And so we talked with Anderson about it, and they were like, "Hey, if it looks great, keep it there." So we kept it there, and that was one of the things that I was probably most happy about holding on to, because it just gives an extra, for me, a little extra bit of interest and authenticity to it. That it's just not a solid white panel down the back of the ship.
Do you think that's probably why Mattel put it in there?
I would think so. Yeah, because I mean, it. We have the columns that go down through the center of the transport module, with the wells there at the top. Yeah, you can see the column there, and so just something to kind of help distract from these two gaping holes in the top of the vehicle.
Yeah.
I think they probably put something there. And again, Craig and I spent a lot of time looking at the Mattel model and everything, and for it being such a wonderful, piece of art and a piece of work, it really is just so clean and simplistic in its design. And so yeah, it's just been a great process to go back and forth and build this new one based off of the old.
So this is beautiful. I have, as I said, like when I first saw it, I was like, man, this is just a cool design. This is something I really dig, something I'd be very tempted to add to my collection, particularly again with that O-ring connection. And then you guys, oh my gosh, this is incredible. What am I looking at? For the listeners, this is a completely different color scheme of what we've been talking about. And I am in love. Like anybody who's been with Needless Things for any amount of time knows that I like a little outrageous deco every once in a while. And this is crazy. Is this based on something? What is this?
So go ahead, Craig. No, that's fine.
Well, this is the colorway that represents a company called Dinky, put out a die-cast version of this over in the UK, and this is the color scheme they used for their ship.
Oh, okay.
There was this green version, and then there was also a blue version.
Oh, wait, I thought I had multiple images of that thing. I was wrong.
No, we had to do a mock-up of that. So.
Okay.
Thanks to Tim's Photoshop magic.
So after already being like, man, I really, really am considering the other one, if I'm getting one, this is the one I'm getting. This is the one I want on my shelf as a conversation piece, as a just visually, this is beautiful, especially that transparent red on the middle portion of it, just everything about it. And if you're listening to this episode, I highly recommend, are these images, these are up for pre-order right now on Zica Toys Direct, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So check out zicatoys.com. Go look at these images and look at the Eagle 1976 Dinky edition, and you will understand my fascination with this color scheme. I mean, this is this takes the 70s aesthetic to another level. It's almost refrigerator green.
Yeah.
Almost, yeah. It's got some avocado in there for sure, right?
Yes. Yes. Oh man. Okay, so to get to this one, I skipped past a couple of things.
Yeah.
What this configuration here? I didn't even realize this was this modular aspect of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's straight from Mattel toy. The front and back come off to make this like smaller scout ship, and ours does that as well.
So this is having larger vehicle type things with modular elements like this is again, to go back to the whole point of everything we do, it's toyetic.
Yeah.
It's such a good play value. It goes back to the whole theoretical Millennium Falcon launch capsule that was rumored for years, and then Hasbro finally executed. Having those smaller pieces that can come off of the larger one is such an exciting thing. And I can just imagine like being a kid, and you've got your main ship, you set down, you establish your base, and you're like, all right, we got to go out on patrol, and you go out on patrol. Like that was a huge element of play with every toy line I ever had, was you have your base, but you got to go out on a mission.
Yeah. The mobile command center for GI Joe,
Yes.
12-inch Joe, that front cab came right off, and you could drive that around, and like you said, the base stayed right there. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
So as I said, everybody needs to check out zicatoys.com. You can currently pre-order a let me get back to the crew here. So a 4-pack of the O-Ring astronauts, the Eagle 1976 Mattel edition, which is the, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I just realized this is different as well. Hang on.
Yep.
Let me bring this other slide up.
There you go.
So this one, I guess this deco is directly referencing the Mattel one.
Yes.
Oh, man. So there are 3 different paint schemes currently available. The Mattel edition, which resembles the original toy. The standard edition, which is designed more to look like the spaceship from the show.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Dinky edition, which is, I mean, just another level of incredible that we can't even describe right now.
Well, and that's interesting. I was, talking with Space 1999 fans over the years, but also I was over in London for the Space 1999 convention this past summer, and it's really a love-hate relationship with that Dinky version.
Oh, I'm sure.
There are people who are like, it was gosh awful and they should have never done it. And there's others who are like me that, as a kid, I was like, I don't really understand why this is green. It's never green on the show. But I was not totally offended by it. And as I've mellowed over the years, it's the first one. When Craig and I were talking about variants, I was like, we got to do a Dinky because that's the one I want.
Well, and it's funny because when I was younger, stuff like that bothered me so much. If it didn't look right,
exactly.
There was, to bring it to wrestling, which I often do here, there was a line of ECW action figures right around 99, 2000. And because the company wanted to get the most bang for their buck, they did a bunch of repaints that made no sense whatsoever. Guys that never wore red and yellow shirts wearing red and yellow shirts, guys that never wore green trunks, and like they didn't make any sense. And at the time, it was almost offensive. But now, because it's such a toy thing, like those repaints are kind of embraced and beloved to a certain extent, because it's just part of the history of toys and how toy companies do things.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah, I have become a big fan of like the weird, where did this come from colorway type stuff. It's just a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
So before we wrap things up real quick, I jumped ahead too fast just a second ago, but we got to talk about what is happening with the Misery Machine here.
That was kind of my idea. I saw this, not this exact concept, but pretty close to it, as fan art online. I came across it one day, and this is about a year or more ago, and it again something just kind of stuck in my head. And then lo and behold, when Ramen Toys comes out with this van, and I see that white one, well, the first thing that pops into my head is like, oh my gosh, here's something that could be utilized for this idea. And so, got with Ace and said, hey, can we do this? And he's like, sure. Tim made the awesome graphics that we've got on there, and this is the prototype that we'll be using to do the pre-orders with. And fingers crossed it does well. So I'm really excited about this one because I'm a huge Scooby-Doo fan anyway. So this
is a scoop. You've seen it here first.
Oh, is it? I didn't even realize that. Well, look at that breaking news, and again, for listeners, this is a variation of I cannot remember the name of the van from Ramen Toys, but it's the A-Team van. It's a big white van. Lots of people are going to be using it as a Punisher battle wagon, I'm sure. I'm the reason I love this is that van that he's making. This kind of thing is exactly what people are going to be doing. We're going to see so many beautiful customs. Like as soon as I saw the white one, I went in a different direction from you, Craig, and I thought, oh man, I need to see a wizard and a dragon airbrushed on the side, 1982 like style back in the day. Like,
right.
I need an old school, heavy metal. What's coming out of the back, and there's so much potential because when you look at the white version of this, it's just this beautiful blank slate.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm right there with you, Dave. I was like Frazetta, Death Dealer.
Yes. Yes.
The whole bit, front to back, top to bottom. Yeah.
Well, I could see this becoming one of those things you see at toy conventions where there's like a whole table of just these vans that people have custom painted. Like when you, I can just see that. Well, almost like when they do with the Stormtrooper helmets and everybody paints up their different version of like that kind of thing. I mean, this could be an art industry unto itself.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Thank you so much for throwing this in there and letting us share this because this kind of thing just excites me. I love seeing what toy companies are accomplishing when they work together now, because we're really starting to see that. I mentioned that a lot of companies are more open to, you know what, if we make it this scale or this way, it's going to work with these other things. But beyond that, we're seeing companies like you guys working with Ace, literally working together to make these products work, because you're all learning different things from the way that you're making toys. And you're seeing stuff like, okay, well, to go back to Fresh Monkey Fiction, they wanted a big giant werewolf. There's another company making big giant werewolves, and they're like, oh, well, we'll use that and put it in our line. Like that kind of cross-pollination and just partnership is really inspiring to see, especially as contentious as just 20 years ago, independent toy companies would be at each other's throats a little bit when it came to certain things. And it really seems like there's more of a community now.
Yeah. Oh, and to that point, I think, Dave, maybe what happened is a lot of these guys who were the early independents and, were like, oh, we can go this on our own. We can do this. We've got this covered. They probably got out there and, found it to be a pretty lonely place to be. Craig and I, two Midwest guys with, no connections really in the broader toy industry. And just, through the good side of Facebook, found each other. And, this has just been one of the great partnerships that I've ever had to work on this project with Craig and to bring this thing to the fans.
Well, and also, who else is going to understand what it's like to spend 2 hours on the phone with a Chinese factory at 2:30 in the morning?
Exactly.
That kind of experience brings people together.
No doubt.
So before we wrap up, anything else you want to mention about the Eagle One or anything else with Zica Toys or with Giant Leap Toys?
We just recently posted pictures from the factory of the tooling that they're working on right now. So, like Tim had mentioned earlier, this thing, assuming there's no hiccups from this point forward, this thing is probably going to be released, quite a bit sooner than we anticipated. So that's a good thing.
And news from the factory too is that they will have shifts running during Chinese New Year.
Oh,
Which
wow.
I couldn't believe that. I had never heard
That floored me. Yeah. Because, usually they vanish for a month, 6 weeks, and maybe some come back, maybe some don't, they decide to stay at home. But yeah, Craig shared that information with me, and I was like, that's just fantastic. And again, I think goes a long way toward, commending Ace and his team on the factory and the relationship that they've been able to build with, with those resources.
So we mentioned everybody can check this stuff out at zicatoys.com. Outside of that, where can we find you guys on social media, and how can we follow along with updates and whatever else?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram.
Yep. Facebook, Instagram, and Threads.
Yeah.
And Giant Leap Toys, Craig Zica Toys. And the only other thing that I would add to the conversation, Dave, is that, we do not intend to have a large inventory of these after production is run. So, if people are interested, they should go ahead and place their order now, because for us, the few that we're going to hold on to will be, for maybe lost pieces or damaged pieces, things like that. Anderson may have a little extra, in their inventory that they plan to sell retail. But here in the States, Craig and I just plan on having just maybe a few cartons to have spares. So,
what are you saying? You don't have a ton of storage space for 3-foot-long spaceships? Come on.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Just a couple of containers out in the backyard, no biggie.
Well, and I'll throw this out there. If you have any interest whatsoever in this ship, and my gosh, if you're a toy collector, you really should let the FOMO get to you, because I guarantee this is going to be one of those items that once it hits and reviews start and pictures start popping up on Instagram and Blue Sky and Threads and wherever else, people are going to go nuts, and the secondary market is not going to be kind to you. Especially considering, because I find the $330 price tag to be very solid for what this is. And over the next few years, I think prices on toys, there's a real good chance they're going to skyrocket.
Mm-hmm.
And something like this, you're going to be way better off getting into the ground level than thinking you're going to find one on eBay or from a shop or something else. So for anybody listening or watching, like just let that FOMO sink in and go ahead and get yourself an Eagle One. Guys, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a great conversation. I once again feel like I have learned stuff, and I always appreciate that. We've had a great time, and everybody out there, order. I want that Dinky edition to be the #1 top ordered Eagle One. Everybody get on that thing. Order it up. Craig and Tim, thank you so much, guys.
Yeah,
thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
Hey, Phantomaniacs, I want to tell you about memberships for the Needless Things channel. We have 3 different levels. Each one has different special perks that will only be available to members. We've got things like special emojis that I made myself, badges, polls that you're going to be able to participate in to determine what we do here on the channel, early access to videos, exclusive live chats, exclusive live streams, lots of engagement, because that's really what I want. I really enjoy the comments here on the channel, even the negative ones. I like getting into that kind of stuff, and I want people to feel like they're more a part of what's going on here. And obviously, I want support for the channel. This stuff, as much as I love doing it and providing it for free, it isn't free for me. So every little bit that we can get helps out. And even if you don't join as a member, thank you for your support, whether liking, subscribing, sharing, whatever it is you do. It's all important. But those memberships, the members are going to get lots of cool stuff exclusive only to them.
Smash that like button if you like Needless Things.